The transport ship Meridian shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace near the outer rim of the Kethvar system. Dr. Sarah Chun pressed her face against the small porthole, watching the alien star cast its purple light across unfamiliar constellations. After 3 months of traveling through the void, she was finally here. "First time seeing a Kethvar sun?" asked Captain Morrison, floating up behind her in the zero-gravity corridor. Sarah nodded, unable to hide her excitement. "First time seeing any alien sun. I still can't believe they approved my research proposal." The captain chuckled. "Well, xenobiology research on predator species isn't exactly a popular field. Most folks prefer studying the peaceful herbivore races." Sarah understood why. The Kethvar were apex predators from a harsh world where only the strongest survived. Standing 8 feet tall, with razor-sharp claws and teeth designed for tearing flesh, they looked like nightmares brought to life. Their society was built around strength and dominance. Most humans found them terrifying, but Sarah had spent years studying their culture from afar. She saw something others missed. Behind their fearsome exterior lay a complex society with intricate family bonds and a deep respect for those who could teach their young. The Kethvar valued knowledge almost as much as they valued strength. "Incoming transmission from the planet's surface," announced the ship's communication officer. The main screen flickered to life, showing the massive form of Pack Leader Thangkar. His fur was silver with age, and 3 parallel scars ran across his left cheek. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Human vessel, you carry the teacher, Sarah Chun?" "Yes, Pack Leader," Captain Morrison replied. "Dr. Chun is ready to begin her work with your cubs." Thankar's yellow eyes fixed on Sarah through the screen. "You are smaller than I expected, human. Are you certain you can handle our young? They are not like your soft human children." Sarah stepped forward, meeting his gaze steadily. "I prepared for this assignment for 5 years, Pack Leader. I understand your cubs are strong and intelligent. That's exactly why I'm here." Something shifted in Thankar's expression. Perhaps it was approval, or maybe just curiosity. "We shall see. Transport down to these coordinates. My warriors will escort you to the learning den." The screen went dark, and Sarah felt her heart racing. This was it. She was about to become the first human to live among the Kethvar and work directly with their young. 2 hours later, Sarah stood on the surface of Kethvar Prime, breathing the thin mountain air through her environmental suit. The planet's gravity was heavier than Earth's, making each step feel labored. Rocky peaks stretched toward the purple sky, and she could hear the distant howls of wild pack hunters echoing through the canyons. 3 Kethvar warriors surrounded her, their weapons gleaming in the alien sunlight. They moved with the fluid grace of natural predators, and Sarah had to remind herself that these beings had agreed to let her work with their most precious possessions, their cubs. The journey to the settlement took an hour on foot across treacherous mountain paths. Sarah was breathing hard by the time they reached the cluster of stone buildings carved directly into the mountainside. Kethvar adults watched her passage with suspicious yellow eyes, their lips curling to show impressive fangs. "They're not used to seeing humans here," explained Karneth, the lead warrior. His English was heavily accented, but clear. "Most of your species fear us." "I'm not most humans," Sarah replied. Karneth's ears perked forward, and what she'd learned was the Kethvar equivalent of a smile. "No, you are not. Kulme. The cubs are waiting." The learning den was a large circular chamber with smooth stone walls and no furniture except for soft moss covering the floor. As Sarah entered, she heard the sound first, a low, rhythmic rumbling that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Then she saw them. 7 Kethvar cubs sat in a circle in the center of the room. Each one was about the size of a human 10-year-old, but with the same predatory features as their parents. Their fur ranged from deep brown to silver, and their eyes glowed with intelligence and curiosity. But what captured Sarah's attention was what they were doing. The cubs were creating a complex harmony with their voices, producing deep, throaty sounds that resonated through the stone chamber. It wasn't quite music as humans understood it, but it had rhythm and melody and something that spoke to a deeper part of Sarah's mind. The largest cub, a female with dark brown fur, stopped singing and fixed her gaze on Sarah. "You are the human teacher," she said in perfect English. "I am Zarneth. Why do you smell of fear?" Sarah blinked in surprise. She hadn't realized her nervousness was so obvious. "I'm not afraid of you," she said carefully. "I'm excited to meet you all." A smaller cub with silver-tipped ears laughed, a sound like wind chimes made of bone. "She lies poorly for a teacher. Cubs can always smell truth, human." "Then, let me tell you the truth," Sarah said, sitting cross-legged on the moss. "I am nervous because this is very important to me. I want to learn about your people and share what I know. I've never taught cubs like you before." Zaraneth tilted her head, considering this. "What can you teach us that our own teachers cannot?" Sarah reached in her pack and pulled out a small device, a portable music player loaded with thousands of hours of human music. "I want to teach you about human music. I think you might find it interesting." The cubs exchanged glances, and she could hear them communicating in low growls that her translator couldn't parse. Finally, Zaraneth spoke again. "Show us." Sarah activated the device and selected a piece she'd chosen carefully, Bach's Cello Suite No. 1 in G major. The haunting melody filled the chamber, and she watched the cubs' reactions with fascination. Their ears perked forward, and several of them began to sway slightly with the rhythm. The smallest cub, who couldn't have been more than 5 years old, closed his eyes and let out a soft purr that harmonized with the music. When the piece ended, the chamber was silent except for the sound of 7 cubs breathing. Again, Zaraneth commanded. Sarah played the piece again, and this time she noticed something extraordinary. The cubs began to hum along, their voices finding harmonies within Bach's composition that Sarah had never heard before. Their predator vocal cords produced overtones and resonances that added new layers to the familiar melody. "How did you do that?" Sarah asked when the music stopped. "Music speaks to the hunt mind," explained a cub with distinctive white markings around his eyes. "All Kethvar know this. But your human music, it speaks to something else. Something we do not have words for." Sarah felt a chill of excitement. This was exactly what she'd hoped to find, a bridge between species through the universal language of music. "Would you like to learn more?" she asked. For the next several hours, Sarah introduced the cubs to different styles of human music. They were particularly drawn to pieces with strong rhythms and complex harmonies. Classical symphonies made them restless and eager, as if preparing for a hunt. Jazz confused them at first, but once they understood the concept of improvisation, they began creating spontaneous variations that left Sarah breathless with their beauty. When she played rock music, something unexpected happened. The cubs stood up and began moving their bodies in time with the beat. It wasn't dancing as humans understood it. It was something more primal and powerful. Their movements flowed together like a pack preparing for battle, but there was joy in it, a celebration of strength and unity. "This music makes us feel strong," Zaraneth panted after a particularly energetic session with some classic rock anthems. "It wakes up the fire in our blood. It makes us want to run and hunt and sing to the moons," added the smallest cub, his eyes bright with excitement. As the day wore on, Sarah began to understand that she wasn't just teaching these cubs about human music. She was discovering something fundamental about the nature of the Kethvar themselves. Music wasn't just entertainment for them. It was a way of connecting with their deepest instincts, a tool for building unity and strength within the pack. When the evening meal horn sounded across the settlement, Thainkar appeared in the doorway of the learning den. His massive frame filled the entrance as he surveyed the scene. Sarah sitting among his cubs, all of them still humming fragments of human melodies. "How goes the teaching, human?" he rumbled. "Very well, pack leader," Sarah replied, standing respectfully. "Your cubs are remarkable students. She has shown us hunt music from her world," Zaraneth reported excitedly. It makes our hearts beat faster and our claws grow sharp. Thanekar's eyes narrowed as he studied Sarah more carefully. Music that strengthens cubs? This is interesting. Show me. Sarah hesitated for a moment, then activated her music player again. She selected the William Tell Overture, a piece that had gotten the strongest reaction from the cubs earlier. As the dramatic crescendos filled the chamber, she watched the pack leader's body language change. His posture straightened, his muscles tensed, and his breathing deepened. By the time the piece reached its famous cavalry charge finale, Thanekar was standing at full attention, every inch the powerful warrior leader. When the music ended, he was quiet for a long moment. "Tomorrow, you will play this for the adult pack," he said finally. "If your human music can make cubs feel stronger, perhaps it can do the same for warriors." As Sarah gathered her equipment that evening, she realized she'd stumbled onto something much bigger than a simple cultural exchange. The cubs had responded to human music in ways she'd never expected, and now their pack leader wanted to explore its potential further. She thought about the cubs' natural ability to find harmonies, their instinctive movement to rhythm, and their description of music as hunt music that woke up the fire in their blood. There was something here that went beyond mere appreciation for different musical styles. That night, as Sarah lay in the guest quarters provided by the pack, she could hear the cubs in the distance, still humming fragments of the human song she'd taught them. Their voices blended together in complex harmonies that seemed to float on the mountain wind. She smiled to herself in the darkness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and discoveries. But tonight, she was content to listen to the sound of human and Kethvar music blending together under alien stars, creating something beautiful that neither species could have achieved alone. The last thing she heard before drifting off to sleep was Zarneth's voice, rising above the others in a haunting melody that combined Bach's precision with the raw power of Kethvar vocal traditions. It was unlike anything that had ever existed before, a true fusion of two worlds created by a young predator cub who had learned that music could make her stronger. And in that moment, Sarah knew that her research was going to change everything she thought she knew about the relationship between music, culture, and the fundamental nature of intelligence itself. Sarah woke before dawn to the sound of adult Kethvar voices echoing across the settlement. Their deep, rumbling communication carried emotions she was still learning to interpret, but the undertones seemed tense. She dressed quickly in her environmental suit and made her way to the learning den, where she found the cubs already gathered and waiting. "The pack elders are arguing about you," Zaraneth said without preamble. "Some think your music is too strange. They say it will make us forget our own songs." "What do you think?" Sarah asked, settling onto the moss beside them. The smallest cub, who had introduced himself as Corinne the previous day, looked up at her with bright golden eyes. "I dreamed in your music last night. I was running through a forest, but it wasn't our forest. The trees sang with string instruments, and the ground drummed beneath my paws. When I woke up, I felt like I could jump to the moons." Sarah felt a surge of excitement, mixed with concern. The cubs were clearly being affected by the music on a level deeper than she'd initially understood. "How about the rest of you? Did anyone else have unusual dreams?" All 7 cubs raised their hands, a human gesture they'd apparently picked up from her. Each described vivid dreams where human music had transformed their familiar world into something new and wondrous. In their dreams, they had been stronger, faster, and more capable than ever before. "This is exactly what Elder Vorik fears," said a cub named Thresh, whose rust-colored fur marked him as coming from the mountain clans. "He says human influences will weaken our natural abilities." Before Sarah could respond, heavy footsteps announced the arrival of several adult Kethvar. Pack leader Thanekar entered first, followed by 3 others Sarah hadn't met. The largest of the newcomers had silver fur and carried himself with the authority of someone used to being obeyed. This must be Elder Vorik, Sarah thought, noting the suspicious way his yellow eyes tracked her every movement. Human teacher, Car rumbled. These are the pack elders. They wish to observe your music lessons before deciding if they should continue. Elder Vorik stepped forward, his massive frame casting Sarah in shadow. I have heard troubling reports. You fill our cubs' minds with alien sounds. You make them dream of impossible things. Explain why this is not a corruption of their natural development. Sarah stood carefully, keeping her body language respectful, but not submissive. She'd learned that Kethvar respected confidence, but any sign of challenge to authority would end her research immediately. Elder Vorik, I believe human music can enhance your cub's natural abilities, not replace them. Yesterday, they demonstrated vocal harmonies I've never heard from any species. They're not losing their Kethvar nature, they're expanding it. Words, Vorik growled dismissively. Show us proof. Sarah activated her music player and selected a piece she'd been saving for this moment. Mars, the bringer of war from Gustav Holst the Planets. The powerful, driving rhythms filled the chamber like an approaching army. The effect on the cubs was immediate and dramatic. They stood as one, their bodies moving in perfect synchronization. But this wasn't the playful dancing from the day before. This was something primal and coordinated like a military formation guided by instinct rather than training. As the music built to its thunderous climax, the cubs began to vocalize in harmony with the orchestra. Their voices added layers of sound that made the already powerful piece seem to shake the very foundations of the mountain. Sarah watched the adults' reactions with careful attention. Car's ears were fully erect, his body tense with barely controlled energy. The other elders showed similar signs of arousal and excitement. But Elder Vorik remained unmoved, his expression skeptical. When the music ended, the cubs remained in their formation for several heartbeats before gradually relaxing. Impressive coordination, admitted one of the younger elders. But what practical value does this have? May I suggest a demonstration? Sarah asked. With your permission, I'd like to test whether music affects their physical capabilities. Tanekar nodded slowly. What kind of test? Something simple. Have them perform a standard pack exercise, maybe hunting formations or combat drills. First without music, then with it. We can measure the difference. Elder Vorik's laugh was harsh and dismissive. You think your alien noise will make our cubs better warriors? Ridiculous. If I'm wrong, then my research ends here, Sarah said calmly. But if I'm right, your pack gains access to a tool that could make your warriors stronger than any others in the galaxy. The elders exchanged glances, communicating in the rapid growls and subtle body language that Sarah was still learning to interpret. Finally, Car spoke. Very well, Zaraneth. Led your clutchmates in the spiral hunt formation. Standard de pace. The cubs immediately arranged themselves in a complex pattern and began moving through a series of coordinated maneuvers. Sarah watched with fascination as they demonstrated the precise teamwork that made Kethvar pack hunters so effective. Their movements were smooth and efficient, each cub knowing exactly where the others would be at any given moment. Excellent, Car said when they finished. Now, human teacher, play your music. Sarah selected a piece she'd been experimenting with, a fusion of Beethoven's Symphony No. 5-inch and some modern electronic music that emphasized driving rhythms. As the powerful opening notes began, she said, "Same formation, cubs. Let the music guide you." The transformation was extraordinary. The cubs moved through the same sequence of maneuvers, but everything was different. Their coordination was tighter, their movements more fluid and powerful. They seemed to anticipate each other's actions even better than before, as if the music was providing a shared consciousness that enhanced their natural pack instincts. But most remarkably, they were faster. Significantly faster. Sarah estimated they completed the formation in about 70% of their normal time, without any loss of precision. When the exercise ended, the cubs were breathing hard, but their eyes were bright with excitement. That felt incredible, Zaraneth panted. It was like thinking with one mind. The music made everything clearer. I could feel where everyone was going to be before they moved, Corinne added. Like the music was showing me the future. Sarah looked at the stunned faces of the adult Kethvar. Even Elder Vorik seemed shaken by what he'd witnessed. Ow! Tanikar demanded. How does your music do this? Sarah had been thinking about this question since she first observed the cub's reactions. I believe it has to do with neural synchronization. Human music seems to help your brains coordinate with each other more effectively. The rhythms and harmonies create a shared framework that enhances your natural pack bonding. You're saying the music makes us better at being Kethvar? Asked one of the younger elders. Exactly. It doesn't change what you are, it amplifies it. Elder Vorik stepped forward, his expression still skeptical, but less hostile than before. This is one demonstration with cubs. Can you prove this works with fully grown warriors? Before Sarah could answer, alarms began sounding across the settlement. The deep, resonant horns that warned of approaching danger echoed off the mountain walls. Through the chamber's opening, Sarah could see adult Kethvar running toward defensive positions. Krolik raiders, Thane-Kar snarled, his lips curling back to reveal his impressive fangs. They choose a poor time to test our borders. The Krolik were another predator species that shared this star system with the Kethvar. Sarah had read about the ongoing territorial disputes between the two races, but she'd hoped her visit wouldn't coincide with actual conflict. How many? Asked Elder Vorik. Scout reports indicate at least 50, moving up the southern approach, replied a warrior who had appeared in the chamber entrance. They're using hover bikes and plasma weapons. Sarah watched as the cubs immediately moved into a tight defensive formation around her. Even in their excitement about the music, their protective instincts were strong. Cubs should be in the deep shelters, Thane-Kar said firmly. No, Zarnath said, her young voice carrying surprising authority. We can help. The humans' music makes us stronger. Let's prove it. Absolutely not, Elder Vorik growled. Cubs do not fight Krolik raiders. But Sarah was thinking fast. This could be exactly the demonstration they needed to prove the practical value of music-enhanced coordination. What if they don't fight directly? She suggested. What if they provide support? Musical coordination for your warriors during the battle. The idea was radical and dangerous. Using cubs in any capacity during a raid went against every Kethvar instinct. But the potential advantages were too significant to ignore. Thane-Kar was quiet for a long moment, weighing the risks. Finally, he turned to his warriors. How long before the Krolik reach our outer perimeter? 15 minutes at current speed. Bring me reports on their exact numbers and weapons, and summon all available warriors to the main defensive line. He looked at Sarah with an expression she couldn't quite read. Human teacher, if you truly believe your music can make our warriors more effective, now is the time to prove it. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. The cubs were moved to a sheltered position where they could see the main defensive line, but remain relatively safe from enemy fire. Sarah set up her portable speakers to project music across the battlefield, while Kethvar warriors took positions behind stone barriers and weapon emplacements. From her vantage point, Sarah could see the approaching Krolik force. They looked like a cross between reptiles and insects riding sleek hover bikes that skimmed across the rocky terrain. Their weapons glowed with stored energy, and their movements had the coordinated precision of experienced raiders. They're professionals, Thane-Kar observed grimly. This isn't a random attack. They're testing our defenses for something larger. Sarah felt a cold knot of fear in her stomach. If her musical enhancement theory was wrong, she might be about to contribute to a disaster that would cost Kethvar lives. Are you ready, cubs? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. We are ready, Zarnath replied for all of them. Play the war music, human teacher. Let our warriors feel the strength that we felt. Sarah took a deep breath and activated her music system. She'd prepared a special playlist for this moment, a fusion of the most powerful and coordinated music humanity had ever created, arranged to enhance pack coordination and fighting spirit. As the opening notes of her musical fusion echoed across the battlefield, Sarah watched something extraordinary happen to the Kethvar warriors. Their movements became more fluid and coordinated. Warriors who had been operating as individuals began flowing together like parts of a single organism. When the Krolik raiders crested the ridge and opened fire, the Kethvar response was devastatingly effective. But the real surprise was yet to come. The cubs began to sing. Their voices rose in harmony with the human music, adding layers of sound that seemed to resonate directly with the fighting Kethvar below. It wasn't just entertainment or enhancement anymore. It was active participation in the battle itself. And as their voices joined the fray, Sarah realized that she was witnessing the birth of something entirely new, a fusion of human and Kethvar capabilities that was greater than the sum of its parts. The real test was just beginning. The battle that followed would be remembered in Kethvar history as the Song of Victory, though Sarah didn't learn that name until much later. In a moment, she was focused entirely on the extraordinary scene unfolding before her. The cubs' voices wove through her carefully selected music like threads of liquid metal, creating harmonies that seemed to resonate in the very bones of the Kethvar warriors below. What had started as Sarah's experiment in cross-species musical appreciation had become something far more profound, a real-time demonstration of how human creativity could amplify alien natural abilities. The Krolik raiders had clearly expected a conventional defensive response. Their hoverbikes swept toward the settlement in a classic pincer formation, plasma weapons charging for devastating volleys. But the Kethvar warriors weren't responding conventionally. Instead of holding static defensive positions, they flowed like water around the battlefield. When one group drew Krolik fire, another would appear from an unexpected angle. When raiders tried to flank the main force, they found Kethvar warriors already in position to intercept them. The music seemed to be providing a shared tactical consciousness that allowed unprecedented coordination. Incredible, breathed Elder Vorik, his earlier skepticism forgotten as he watched the battle unfold. They move like a single organism with 50 minds. Sarah was monitoring her audio equipment when she noticed something that made her blood run cold. The music was affecting the cubs more intensely than she'd expected. Their eyes had taken on an almost hypnotic glow, and their voices were producing harmonics that her equipment registered as being beyond normal Kethvar vocal ranges. "Zaraneth," she called out, trying to get the lead cub's attention. "Are you feeling all right?" The young Kethvar turned toward her, and Sarah saw that her pupils were dilated despite the bright mountain sunlight. When she spoke, her voice had an otherworldly quality that sent chills down Sarah's spine. "We can feel them, human teacher. Every warrior, every heartbeat, every thought. The music opens paths between minds that were never meant to be opened." Before Sarah could respond, the tactical situation on the battlefield changed dramatically. The Krolik commander had apparently realized that conventional tactics weren't working because the raiders suddenly shifted to a desperate all-out assault. 50 hoverbikes surged forward in a coordinated charge, their riders firing everything they had. The air filled with plasma bolts and the screech of energy weapons. Several Kethvar warriors went down, and for a moment it looked like the enhanced coordination might not be enough. That's when Corinne, the smallest cub, did something that would haunt Sarah's dreams for years to come. He stepped forward and began singing a melody Sarah had never heard before. It wasn't human music, and it wasn't traditional Kethvar battle songs. It was something entirely new, born from the fusion of two musical traditions and powered by whatever neural synchronization was happening between the cubs. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Every Kethvar warrior on the battlefield suddenly moved within human precision and speed. They dodged plasma bolts that should have been impossible to avoid, appeared behind enemy lines as if they could teleport, and struck with accuracy that defied explanation. It was as if the cubs' song had temporarily elevated the warriors beyond their natural physical limitations. The Krolik charge faltered, then broke entirely. Within minutes, The surviving raiders were retreating in disorder, leaving behind nearly half their number. As the enemy disappeared over the ridge, Sarah quickly shut off her music system. The sudden silence felt shocking after the intensity of the battle song. The cubs swayed on their feet, their eyes slowly returning to normal. Several of them looked confused, as if waking from a dream they couldn't quite remember. "What happened?" Zarneth asked weakly. "I remember singing, but everything after that feels strange." "You helped win a battle," Sarah replied, though she wasn't sure that fully captured what had occurred. "You did something I've never seen before." Thane-Kar approached their position, his fur singed from plasma fire, but his expression triumphant. "Human teacher, your music and our cubs' voices gave us an impossible victory. The Krolik had superior numbers and weapons, but they could not match our coordination. There were no Kethvar casualties," reported a warrior. "Minor injuries only. The enemy could not target us effectively." Elder Vorik's massive form appeared beside Thane-Kar. The old warrior's expression was complex, part amazement, part concern, and part something that might have been fear. "Pack leader, we must discuss what we witnessed here." The cubs, they did more than sing. For a time, they seemed to control our warriors' actions directly. Sarah felt a chill of apprehension. She'd been so focused on the tactical success that she hadn't fully considered the implications of what the cubs had accomplished. "I need to run some tests," she said quickly. "Medical scans, neural monitoring. We need to understand exactly what happened to the cubs during the battle." Over the next several hours, Sarah worked with the settlement's medical staff to examine each of the 7 cubs. The results were both fascinating and disturbing. All 7 showed elevated neural activity in regions of their brains associated with psychic phenomena. Among the Kethvar, such abilities were rare and considered both a gift and a curse. Individuals with strong psychic talents often struggled to control them, and history was filled with stories of psychic Kethvar who had been driven insane by unwanted mental connections. But the cubs showed no signs of distress or loss of control. If anything, they seemed more alert and focused than before. "The music did something to us," Thresh explained as Sarah reviewed his brain scans. "It opened doorways in our minds that we didn't know existed. During the battle, we could feel every warrior as if they were extensions of our own bodies." "And now?" Sarah asked. "Can you still feel those connections?" "Only faintly, like echoes, but I think we could open those doorways again if we needed to." Sarah spent most of the night analyzing the data and trying to understand what she'd accidentally discovered. The combination of human music and Kethvar neural physiology had apparently triggered latent psychic abilities in the cubs, allowing them to create a battlefield coordination network that gave their warriors superhuman capabilities. The implications were staggering. If this effect could be replicated and controlled, it could revolutionize Kethvar military capabilities. But it could also be incredibly dangerous. Psychic abilities were unpredictable, and using cubs as living weapons raised serious ethical questions. She was still working when Zarneth appeared in the doorway of her quarters. "Human teacher, may I speak with you?" "Of course. Kumain." Sarah gestured to a cushion beside her workstation. "How are you feeling?" "Different," Zarneth admitted. "The song we created during the battle, I can still hear pieces of it in my mind. And sometimes when I concentrate, I can feel the other cub's thoughts." Sarah's blood chilled. "All the time? Or only when you try to?" "Only when I try. But it's getting easier." The young Kethvar looked up at her with ancient eyes. "Is this what you intended when you brought your music to us?" The question hit Sarah like a physical blow. Had she intended this? She wanted to study cross-species musical appreciation, maybe discover some interesting cultural parallels. She certainly hadn't set out to unlock latent psychic powers in alien children. "No," she admitted. "I had no idea this would happen. I'm sorry if I've caused problems for you." "Problems?" Zarneth tilted her head in confusion. "Human teacher, you have given us a gift beyond measure. We can think together, fight together, sing together in ways our people have never achieved. Why would this be a problem?" Before Sarah could answer, alarms began sounding again across the settlement. But these weren't the war horns that had announced the Krolak attack. These were different tones, the signals used for internal emergencies. Thanekar's voice echoed from the settlement's communication system. All cubs to the deep shelters immediately. Emergency lockdown is in effect. Sarah and Zaraneth exchanged glances, then hurried toward the main chamber where they could see what was happening. What they found there made Sarah's heart sink. Elder Vorik stood in the center of the room, surrounded by a group of warriors. His expression was grim, and his body language suggested barely controlled anger. Pack leader, he was saying as Sarah and Zaraneth arrived, we cannot allow this to continue. The cubs have been changed by alien influence. They are no longer purely Kethvar. Their abilities helped us achieve a great victory, Thanekar replied carefully. Their abilities are unnatural. They sing alien songs and think alien thoughts. Today they controlled our warriors' minds. Tomorrow they might control all of us. This human has brought corruption into our pack. Sarah felt the weight of multiple stares as every Kethvar in the chamber turned toward her. Some expressions showed curiosity or gratitude, but others reflected Vorik's suspicion and anger. The cubs are not corrupted, Sarah said, stepping forward. They're enhanced. They've learned to use abilities that were always part of their nature, just hidden. Enhanced by alien magic, Vorik snarled. You admit it. You have used your human sorcery to change our young. It's not sorcery, Sarah protested. It's science. Music affects brain chemistry. In humans, it can alter mood and cognitive function. In Kethvar, it seems to unlock psychic potentials. There's nothing magical about it. Words Vorik dismissed. Whatever you call it, the result is the same. Our cubs are no longer what they were born to be. Thanekar held up a massive hand for silence. Elder Vorik raises important concerns. But we cannot ignore the practical benefits we witnessed today. Perhaps we need more information before making decisions. There's something else you need to consider, Sarah said, pulling out her tablet to show the neural scan data. The changes in the cubs aren't permanent. The enhanced neural activity is already beginning to fade. Within a few days, their brain patterns should return to normal. This caused a stir among the assembled Kethvar. Several of them began speaking at once in their rapid battle language. You mean the effect is temporary? Asked one of the younger warriors. Unless they're regularly exposed to the right musical combinations, yes. The neural pathways that were opened will close again. Then, we have a choice, Thanekar mused. We can end these experiments now and allow the cubs to return to their natural state. Or we can continue and risk. What exactly? Sarah looked around the chamber, seeing the future of her research and possibly the future of human-Kethvar relations hanging in the balance. She thought about the cubs who had trusted her, the warriors who had benefited from enhanced coordination, and the larger implications for both their species. I think the bigger risk is not understanding what we've discovered, she said finally. The cubs have shown us a glimpse of what Kethvar can become when their natural abilities are fully unlocked. If you stop now, you'll never know how far those abilities could develop. And if we continue, Elder Vorik demanded. Sarah met his fierce gaze directly. Then we explore it carefully, scientifically, with proper safeguards. We learn to control it instead of being controlled by it. The debate that followed would determine not just the future of Sarah's research, but the destiny of the entire Kethvar pack. And hanging over everything was the question that none of them could yet answer. Had Sarah's music lessons awakened something wonderful in the cubs, or something dangerous? As the argument raged around her, Sarah found herself thinking about Zaraneth's words. The young Kethvar had called the psychic connection a gift. But Sarah knew from human history that the most powerful gifts were often the most dangerous ones. The choice they made in the next few hours would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. The Great Council convened at dawn 3 days after the battle. Representatives from all 5 major Kethvar packs had traveled to the mountain settlement to witness what was being called the Human's Miracle, or the human's curse, depending on who was speaking. Sarah stood in the center of the massive stone amphitheater, surrounded by more than 200 adult Kethvar. Their yellow eyes glowed in the early morning light, and the sound of their breathing created a low, constant rumble that she felt in her bones. She had never been more aware of being the only human on a planet full of apex predators. Pack leader Thane-Kar spoke first, his voice echoing off the ancient stone walls. Brothers and sisters of the hunt, we gather to decide the fate of an unprecedented discovery. The human teacher Sarah-Chun has brought us knowledge that awakened hidden powers in our cubs. The question before us is whether this knowledge is a gift to be embraced or a danger to be eliminated. A wave of growls and rumbles swept through the assembled pack leaders. Sarah caught fragments of their rapid battle language, but the emotions were clear enough. Some voices carried excitement and curiosity. Others held suspicion and anger. Before we debate, Thane-Kar continued, the cubs will demonstrate what they have learned. Zaraneth and her 6 clutchmates entered the amphitheater in a tight formation. They had spent the last 2 days practicing under Sarah's guidance, learning to control their new abilities rather than being overwhelmed by them. The difference was remarkable. Where 3 days ago they had seemed almost possessed during their psychic songs, now they moved with confident purpose. We will sing the Song of Unity, Zaraneth announced, her young voice carrying clearly through the vast space. It will show you what we have become. Sarah activated her music system, but this time the human melodies served only as a foundation. The cubs had created something entirely new, a fusion of human musical structure with Kethvar harmonics and their own emerging psychic abilities. As their voices rose together, something extraordinary happened in the amphitheater. Sarah watched the assembled pack leaders' body language change as the music washed over them. The tension and suspicion didn't disappear, but it was joined by something else, a sense of connection and shared purpose that seemed to flow directly from the Cubs' song. For 5 minutes, over 200 individual Kethvar experienced what it felt like to think as one organism. Not mind control, as Elder Vorik had feared, but genuine unity of purpose while maintaining individual consciousness. When the song ended, the silence was profound. By the hunting moons, whispered an elderly female from the Valley Pack. I have never felt anything like that. For a moment, I could sense every heart beating in harmony. It was like the old stories, added a scarred warrior from the northern reaches. The legends of the first pack, when all Kethvar shared one mind. But not everyone was impressed. Pack leader Grokneth of the Desert Clan stood and fixed Sarah with a hostile stare. Human, you speak of gifts and evolution, but what I witnessed was manipulation. Your alien music controls are young. You turn them into puppets for your entertainment. With respect, Pack leader Grokneth, Sarah replied carefully, the Cubs aren't puppets. They created that song themselves. I only provided the musical framework that helped them access abilities they already possessed. Abilities that should remain hidden, Elder Vorik interjected. There are reasons our ancestors sealed away the old mind songs. Psychic powers bring madness and destruction. History teaches us this. A younger pack leader named Shirak Tor stepped forward. History also teaches us that adaptation leads to survival. The galaxy grows more dangerous every year. Stronger enemies, more advanced weapons. Perhaps the time has come to unlock our hidden strengths. The debate that followed was intense and sometimes heated. Sarah listened to arguments in favor of embracing the Cubs' new abilities, the tactical advantages, the potential for advancing Kethvar civilization, the possibility of unlocking similar powers in adults. She also heard the counterarguments, the risks of psychic contamination, the loss of traditional Kethvar identity, the danger of creating weapons too powerful to control. As the morning wore on, it became clear that the council was deeply divided. About half the pack leaders saw the Cubs' abilities as a dangerous deviation from natural Kethvar development. The other half viewed them as an evolutionary advantage that could secure their species' future. Then Corinne, the smallest cub, did something that changed everything. Without warning or permission, he began to sing alone. His voice was high and pure, carrying a melody that Sarah immediately recognized as one of the human pieces she'd played on that first day. Bach's Cello Suite No. 1, but Corinne had transformed it into something uniquely Kethvar, adding harmonics and emotional undertones that spoke directly to the predatory instincts of his species. As he sang, images began to form in the minds of everyone present. Not forced visions, but shared memories and dreams that bubbled up from the collective unconscious of the Kethvar race. They saw their ancestors, the first pack, moving across an ancient landscape with perfect coordination. They felt the unity that had allowed their species to survive and thrive on a hostile world. They experienced the gradual loss of that connection as civilization advanced and individual identity became more important than pack consciousness. And they understood with crystalline clarity that what the cubs had discovered wasn't foreign contamination. It was a return to something that had always been part of their nature. When Corinne's song ended, many of the assembled pack leaders were weeping openly. Even Elder Vorik looked shaken. "The cub speaks truth," said pack leader Thankar, his voice thick with emotion. "What we witnessed was not alien magic. It was the awakening of our oldest heritage. But still dangerous," Grokneth insisted, though his opposition seemed less certain than before. "Power without control leads to chaos." "Then we learn control," suggested Sheraktor. "The human teacher has shown us how to awaken these abilities. Perhaps she can also teach us how to master them." All eyes turned to Sarah. She felt the weight of an entire species' future resting on her shoulders. "I'm willing to try," she said. "But this has to be a partnership. I can share human knowledge about music and neural stimulation, but the cubs are teaching me as much as I'm teaching them. The real breakthroughs are coming from the combination of human creativity and Kethvar natural abilities." "What do you propose?" asked Thankar. "A gradual program. We work with volunteers, cubs whose parents consent to the training. We study the effects carefully, develop safeguards, and never push anyone beyond their comfort level. If problems arise, we stop immediately." "And what about the adults?" asked Sheraktor. "Can these abilities be awakened in fully mature Kethvar?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "The cubs' brains are still developing, which might make them more receptive to neural enhancement. But it's possible that adults could benefit too, given the right approach." The debate continued for hours, but gradually a consensus began to emerge. The majority of pack leaders were willing to support a careful, controlled exploration of the cubs' abilities, provided that strict safeguards were maintained and participation remained voluntary. As the council session wound down, Sarah found herself surrounded by pack leaders wanting to discuss details of the proposed program. Some were enthusiastic, others cautious, but all seemed to recognize that they were witnessing something historically significant. That evening, as Sarah reviewed her notes in her quarters, Zaraneth appeared at her door. "Human teacher, I wanted to thank you." "For what?" Sarah asked, setting aside her tablet. "For seeing us, not as dangerous aberrations or useful weapons, but as Kethvar who have discovered new ways to be ourselves." The young predator paused, choosing her words carefully. "Many of the elders fear what we might become. But you understand that we're not becoming something different. We're becoming more completely what we already were." Sarah felt a surge of pride and affection for this remarkable young being. "I think you've taught me more than I've taught you, Zaraneth. I came here to study how music affects different species. Instead, I've learned that the most powerful discoveries happen when different kinds of intelligence work together. Will you stay with us to continue the teaching? As long as you'll have me. This research is going to take years to complete properly. We're not just developing new training techniques. We're exploring the fundamental nature of consciousness itself." Over the following weeks, Sarah worked with the pack leaders to establish what they called the Unity Project. 20 cubs from various packs volunteered for the program, along with their families. Training facilities were constructed in 3 different settlements, each equipped with advanced monitoring equipment to track the participants' neural development. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. The cubs learned to control their psychic abilities with remarkable precision. They developed techniques for sharing thoughts and emotions without losing their individual identities. Most importantly, they discovered that their powers weren't limited to battle applications. They could enhance artistic expression, problem-solving, and even emotional healing within their packs. Adult volunteers made slower progress, but several older Kethvar managed to achieve limited psychic connections with others. The effect was less dramatic than with the cubs, but still significant enough to improve pack coordination and communication. 6 months after that first music lesson, Sarah received a communication from Earth that would change everything again. Dr. Chun, the message began, your preliminary reports have caused quite a stir here. The implications of your discoveries extend far beyond xenobiology. We're authorizing a full research team to join you, along with advanced equipment and funding for expanded studies. Your work may represent the most important breakthrough in human-alien cooperation since first contact. As Sarah watched the cubs practice their latest musical psychic fusion in the learning den, she reflected on how much had changed since her arrival. What had started as a simple study of musical appreciation had evolved into something that challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of intelligence, consciousness, and the potential for cooperation between species. The cubs were singing a new composition, one that combined elements from human classical music, traditional Kethvar hunting songs, and their own unique psychic harmonies. It was beautiful and alien and somehow perfectly familiar all at once. Human teacher, Zaraneth called out during a break in their practice. When a new researchers arrive from your world, will they understand what we've created here? Sarah smiled, remembering her own amazement and confusion when she first witnessed the cubs' abilities. They'll learn just like I did, and they'll help us discover things neither of our species could find alone. Good, the young Kethvar said with satisfaction. We have much more to teach them. As Sarah prepared for the arrival of the expanded research team, she knew that the Unity Project was just the beginning. The combination of human creativity and Kethvar natural abilities had unlocked possibilities that neither species could have imagined alone. The real adventure was just beginning. 2 years later, Sarah stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Harmony Research Station, watching ships from a dozen different worlds arrive for the first interspecies Unity Conference. The mountain settlement had been transformed into the galaxy's premier center for consciousness research, but she still remembered it as the place where 7 young Kethvar had first learned to sing human music. Dr. Chun, the Andromedans are requesting a demonstration of the Enhanced Coordination Protocol, reported Dr. Marcus Webb, her assistant, and one of the first humans to successfully establish psychic connections with Kethvar partners. Sarah nodded. Though part of her mind was focused on the harmonics, she could feel flowing through the station structure. The building itself had been designed as a massive musical instrument, with resonance chambers and acoustic amplifiers that allowed the psychic songs to spread throughout the facility. It was simultaneously the most advanced research laboratory in the galaxy and a living work of art. Schedule it for this afternoon, she said. Make sure Zarneth's team is ready. The Andromedans are particularly interested in multi-species coordination. Zarneth was no longer a cub. At 17 years old, she stood nearly 7 feet tall and moved with the controlled grace of a fully mature Kethvar warrior. But her golden eyes still held the same curiosity and intelligence that had captivated Sarah during that first music lesson. Human teacher, came a familiar voice from behind her. Sarah turned to find Zaraneth approaching, followed by 2 beings Sarah didn't immediately recognize. One was clearly humanoid, but taller and more slender than either human or Kethvar. The other appeared to be some kind of crystalline entity that communicated through patterns of light. Zaraneth, good to see you. Are these our new volunteers? This is Tlara of the Vegan Collective, Zaraneth said, gesturing to the tall humanoid. Her species has natural telepathic abilities, but they've never explored musical enhancement. And this is Resonance of Crystal Song from the Silicon Confederacy. Their entire race communicates through harmonic frequencies. Sarah felt a familiar thrill of excitement. When the Unity Project had first gained galactic attention, she'd hoped that other species might be interested in exploring similar abilities. But the response had exceeded her wildest expectations. Over the past year, representatives from 37 different worlds had come to study the techniques that had emerged from her work with the Kethvar cubs. "Welcome to Harmony Station," Sarah said, extending her hand to Clara while nodding respectfully to the crystalline being. "I understand you're both interested in participating in our expanded consciousness research." "My people have always been able to share thoughts," Clara replied, her voice carrying musical undertones that suggested a natural affinity for harmony. "But we've never achieved the kind of coordinated action we've heard about here. Our telepathy is chaotic, overwhelming." The crystalline being pulsed with soft blue light, and Sarah's translation device interpreted the patterns. "My species exists in constant harmonic connection, but we lack the individual creativity that seems to drive your breakthrough discoveries. We wish to learn if structured musical frameworks could enhance our collective innovation." "Fascinating," Sarah murmured. Each new species brought unique abilities and challenges, but also new possibilities for expanding their understanding of consciousness itself. "Dr. Chun," Dr. Webb's voice came through her communicator. "We're getting reports of unusual activity in the outer territories. The Kethvar scouts say there's something approaching the system." Sarah felt a chill of apprehension. The Unity Project had attracted positive attention from most of the galaxy's civilized species, but there had also been concerns from more militaristic cultures who viewed the psychic enhancement techniques as potential weapons. "What kind of activity?" she asked. "Large fleet, military configuration. They're not responding to communication attempts, but they're definitely heading this way." Sarah exchanged glances with Zaraneth, who had gone very still in the way that Kethvar did when sensing danger. "How large is large?" Sarah asked. "At least 200 ships. Dreadnought-class vessels with full battle groups. This isn't a diplomatic mission." Through the observation windows, Sarah could see the gathered conference delegates beginning to stir with alarm as emergency signals began broadcasting across the station. Representatives from dozens of worlds looked to her and her team for guidance. "Attention all personnel," Sarah announced over the station's communication system. "We have an unidentified fleet approaching the system. This is not a drill. All non-essential personnel should report to emergency shelters while we assess the situation." But even as she spoke, Sarah knew that conventional shelters wouldn't be much protection against a fleet of that size. The research station was impressive, but it wasn't a military installation. "Human teacher," Zaraneth said quietly, "I believe this is the test we have all been waiting for." "What do you mean?" "For 2 years, we have shown the galaxy how different species can join their minds and abilities. We have demonstrated coordination and unity that our peoples never thought possible. But until now, it has all been theoretical. Research. Games." The crystalline being pulsed with urgent light patterns. "The young predator speaks wisdom. True unity cannot be proven in laboratories. It must be tested in crisis." Clara nodded agreement. "My people's legends speak of a time when all conscious minds will be forced to choose between isolation and connection. Perhaps that time is now." Sarah felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders. The Unity Project had grown far beyond her original research goals. What had started as a study of musical enhancement had evolved into something that challenged the fundamental nature of how intelligent species related to each other. "Dr. Chun," Dr. Webb's voice carried new urgency. "The approaching fleet has been identified. They're hegemony warships." Sarah's blood ran cold. The Terran hegemony was a human supremacist faction that had broken away from Earth's government 5 years earlier. They believed that humanity's role in the galaxy should be one of dominance rather than cooperation, and They view the Unity Project as dangerous contamination of human genetic and cultural purity. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, Dr. Webb continued. They're demanding that all human personnel evacuate the station immediately. They claim we've been corrupted by alien influence and need to be rescued from contamination. And if we refuse? Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. They'll destroy the station and everyone on it. They're calling it a mercy killing. Sarah looked around at the assembled beings, humans, Kethvar, and dozens of other species who had come together to explore the possibilities of genuine interspecies cooperation. In 2 years, they had made discoveries that promised to reshape the galaxy's understanding of consciousness itself. And now it might all be destroyed because some humans couldn't accept that cooperation was stronger than domination. How long do we have? She asked. Their fleet will reach orbital range in 6 hours. 6 hours to either abandon everything they'd built or find a way to defend it against overwhelming odds. Zaraneth, Sarah said, gather all the Unity Project graduates. Every species, every team that's achieved successful psychic coordination. We're going to attempt something that's never been tried before. What did you have in mind, human teacher? Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering the implications of what she was about to propose. We're going to see if 2 years of consciousness research has taught us anything practical about the nature of Unity itself. Over the next several hours, the research station became a hive of activity unlike anything Sarah had ever witnessed. Representatives from 37 different worlds worked together with an urgency born of desperation and hope in equal measure. The plan that emerged was ambitious to the point of seeming impossible. Instead of trying to fight the hegemony fleet with conventional weapons they didn't possess, they would attempt to create a psychic network encompassing every conscious being on the station. Nearly 3,000 individuals from dozens of different species. The goal wasn't mind control or mental domination. It was genuine unity of purpose, a demonstration that cooperation between different forms of consciousness was not only possible, but more powerful than any weapon ever created. The risk is enormous, Dr. Webb pointed out as they made final preparations. We've never attempted to link this many minds across this many different neural architectures. The psychic feedback could kill everyone involved. The alternative is letting the hegemony destroy everything we've built, Sarah replied, and proving their point that cooperation between species is impossible. Are we certain this will work? Asked Clara, her telepathic abilities already humming with nervous energy. Nothing like this has ever been attempted, Sarah admitted. But every breakthrough we've made started with someone being willing to try something that seemed impossible. When the hegemony fleet entered orbital range, they found Harmony Station apparently defenseless. No weapons powered up, no shields activated, no defensive maneuvers initiated. Instead, the station was broadcasting music on every frequency, a complex harmony that seemed to incorporate elements from every known musical tradition in the galaxy. Unidentified fleet, Sarah's voice carried across space, accompanied by the swelling chorus of the Unity song. I am Dr. Sarah Chun, director of the Unity Project. We are not your enemies. We are not contaminated or corrupted. We are the future of what consciousness can become when different forms of intelligence choose to work together instead of fighting each other. The response from the hegemony fleet was immediate. Dr. Chun, you and all human personnel have 60 seconds to evacuate the station before we begin bombardment. This is your final warning. I'm afraid I can't do that, Sarah replied, because what we've built here isn't just a research station. It's proof that your entire philosophy is wrong. As she spoke, the Unity network that had been building for hours finally reached critical mass. 3,000 minds from dozens of different worlds, each maintaining their individual identity while contributing to a collective consciousness that was greater than the sum of its parts. The effect was felt instantly across the entire star system. Every ship in the hegemony fleet suddenly found their crews experiencing something unprecedented, direct contact with alien minds, not through conquest or domination, but through willing connection and shared purpose. For the first time in their lives, human supremacists felt what it was like to think with Kethvar clarity, to experience vegan emotional depth, to resonate with the crystalline harmonics of silicon-based consciousness. The rigid barriers they had built in their minds to justify their hatred and fear began to crumble in the face of genuine understanding. Some fought against the connection, tried to maintain their isolation and superiority. But others, perhaps those who had always harbored secret doubts about the hegemony's philosophy, opened themselves to the experience. The battle for the future of interspecies relations wasn't fought with energy weapons or kinetic projectiles. It was fought in the realm of consciousness itself, where ideas of cooperation and domination met in direct confrontation. When it was over, nearly half the hegemony fleet had defected to the Unity Project. The remainder retreated in confusion, their crews struggling to process what they had experienced. But the real victory wasn't tactical. It was philosophical. Dr. Chun came a transmission from the flagship of the defecting hegemony vessels. This is Captain Rodriguez. We need to talk. What we just experienced, it changes everything we thought we knew about what it means to be human. Sarah smiled as she looked out at the mixed fleet now orbiting Harmony Station. Human vessels flying alongside Kethvar hunter ships, vegan exploration cruisers, and dozens of other designs representing the galaxy's commitment to cooperation over conquest. Captain Rodriguez, welcome to the Unity Project. We have a lot to teach each other. As the months that followed would prove, the confrontation with the hegemony fleet marked the beginning of a new era in galactic civilization. The Unity network that had been created in desperation became the foundation for unprecedented cooperation between species. Wars that had raged for centuries were resolved through shared consciousness experiences that allowed former enemies to truly understand each other. Scientific breakthroughs accelerated as different forms of intelligence combined their unique perspectives. Art and music evolved into forms that no single species could have created alone. And at the center of it all were 7 young Kethvar who had learned that music could make them stronger, and one human teacher who had discovered that the greatest strength came from the willingness to share that strength with others. The galaxy would never be the same. And Sarah Chun, watching new ships arrive daily at Harmony Station, carrying beings eager to explore the possibilities of true unity, knew that this was just the beginning of a story that would span the stars themselves. In her private moments, she still thought about that first day in the learning den, when she had played Bach for a group of curious predator cubs. She had hoped to learn something about cross-species musical appreciation. Instead, she had helped unlock the secret of consciousness itself, the understanding that the greatest minds were not those that stood alone in their brilliance, but those that chose to join together in harmony, creating something beautiful that none of them could achieve on their own. The music of the spheres, it turned out, was always meant to be a choir,